Mr. Rodriguez sends up an amendment. Mr. Parker moves to table. The question is on the motion to table. Record votes requested. All members in favor of the motion to table will vote aye. All opposed will vote no. Show Mr. Rodriguez voting no. Show Mr. Parker voting aye.
There are some 3,000 to 4,000 lobbyists registered in Austin during any given session, and even conservative estimates place the dollars they spend attempting to influence legislation in the hundreds of thousands. That the lobby is effective, there is no question. But just how they operate, just why their stick is so big in the State House, remains either mystery or myth among the body politic. Fact is, out-and-out bribes and other flagrant under-the-table dealings are rare. Our discussions with lawmakers and lobbyists alike revealed the lobby moves in much more subtle and sophisticated ways. Bob Bullock, former legislator, Secretary of State under Governor Preston Smith, and himself a lobbyist for many years in Austin, explains the tools of the lobbying trade.
The lobby attempts, and does a good job with it, attempts to make friends very quickly with members in the legislature. It's a funny thing about politics. You make friends fast. You lose them fast, too. And when a member comes down here, most of them are fairly impressionable. They've heard about the lobby to some extent. The lobbyist invites them out to the house, you know, and invite he and his member and his wife and his kids out there, and he'll let the kid eat a chocolate ice cream cone on his brand new suit and won't say anything about it, and he comments about how pretty his wife is, when in truth, in fact, she'd make a freight train jump down a dirt road, and things like that. The friendship, it's a false friendship, in my opinion. To pass legislation, I think it takes one of three things. A combination, preferably. I think it takes money, and by that I mean money to put into the campaigns during election time. Number two, I think if you don't have a lot of money to spend in the elections to help elect people, you try to have someone represent you who is on a friendly relationship with members of the House, possibly someone who has served in the House. Mm-hmm. And of course, number three, if your clients that you represent are a group that large in number and influential, like school teachers or some of the labor unions in Texas, that's very beneficial to you, too.
Day in and day out, the lobbyists sit up in that corner and stare for hours on end. What are they looking at? What are they looking for?
Well, of course, I guess this is one of the most historic corners in the Capitol gym, but basically they're looking for high members' votes down there. They look to see the associations that one member may have with another. It's an impossibility for a person who is lobbying a bill to know all 150 members intimately. They generally know 5 or 10. And if they see this friend of theirs going out to lunch a great deal with other members, which he may not be particularly friendly with, he'll ask upon that member to help him with other members.
Can you translate the number of dollars made directly into the amount of influence that you would have over a particular legislator? Or does that not always work?
I'll say this, the campaign contributions during a campaign certainly will make friends fast.
Senator Oscar Mauzey, a two-term veteran in the Senate.
Jim, I've always felt that the way the lobby really does its most influential work is during the campaign when the candidate is running for office, by financial support, by helping him get elected. Most people here get themselves obligated on certain issues and to certain groups while they're running for office, long before they ever set foot here. So that most of the time you can pretty well tell the day that the election is over what is going to be enacted the next session and what is not.
Representative Jim Nugent of Kerrville, in his 14th year in the House of Representatives.
I think the idea that the lobby overreaches the members and that the lobby forces the passage of legislation is blown completely out of all proportion to the actual facts.
How much influence, in a general way, would you say that the lobby has over the legislature? And by that I mean a lot, not very much, middling to fair, or what?
Well, I'd say that, for example, in the field of taxation, it has a great deal of influence. And also on other matters where people fail to contact their legislators.
Representative Tom Schieffer of Fort Worth, a freshman in the legislature.
when people come in to talk about bills. You know, you kind of have a tendency, if a fellow's a nice guy and everything, to go along with what he's talking about and agree with his position. Sometimes they kind of gloss over some points that you might not agree with, or they just kind of tend to run over those. And it's, you know, at first I guess you're a little timid about asking questions or being a little hard with somebody that you feel like is just a nice fellow.
Bob, you were a legislator for about, 6 years? From that point of view, from the opposite point of view, how did the lobby work on you, and how did you react to it?
Well, at that time, I was a very impressionable young man. And they generally told me what I wanted to hear. I generally believed it. They told me what a great fellow I was. I believed that. It wasn't until after I got out of the legislature that and was just in plain private practice and came back to Austin a couple of times and found out that I wasn't quite as smart as they had told me that I was, or wasn't quite as good a fellow as I was. I suddenly found that this friendship that is created in Austin is one that is steadfast during the session, and as long as you're still a member.
To me, somebody comes up to you and they're putting a make on you, and you can kind of feel that they're putting a make on you. I think that they're not really that effective. I'd say that there are maybe 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 people that I could think of offhand that I think are really effective lobbyists. That's the way they lobby, by not lobbying. The vast majority of lobbyists, I think, waste their clients' money.
You may not talk to him about legislation each time you go to lunch with him. By the same token, you have a feeling of freedom to talk to him after you have been around him several times that you would otherwise not have had if you had not taken him to lunch, getting to know his kids' names, wife's name, etc.
If you were to give a lobbyist an audience every time he wanted one to talk about this bill or that, how much time out of a given day or week would be occupied by him or them?
Well, that's really hard to say because everybody that comes to see you, almost everybody that comes to see you, represents some sort of interest or another, whether it be a school teacher or somebody representing the trucking industry or one thing like that. And I don't think it is really for me to say, who I should see and who I shouldn't just because they represent something. I'd say maybe a third of your time, a half of your time.
None of us here, of course, are experts about everything that we have to consider and vote on. And consequently, all of us, without exception, must rely upon certain people to provide us with the information that's necessary to make up our minds as to whether to vote for or against a given measure. And a good lobbyist is one who brings you the information and on the basis of that information seeks to persuade you.
Bill is up on oil and gas. You have no oil and gas interest in your respective community. You can go either way on it. Well, naturally, if the person representing that bill or who is for it or against it talks to you about it, tells you that it would hurt him and his business if it did pass, well, you're inclined to go along with your friend, where otherwise, if you had no contact with him at all, you vote either way.
One of the ways the lobby operates is to go into the district from which the member comes and elicit the support of people who live in that district, who operate in that economic area, and see if they're favorable to it. If they're favorable to it, then have them call the member and tell him what their viewpoint is. Try to get support in his area so that he will pay particular attention to it.
Unfortunately, this body of people on both sides of our Capitol, the House and the Senate, they do not have the staff nor the time to adequately research the legislation that comes before them.
We've got, 3,000 bills to consider this session. And when you have that much, you're deluged with information, and you just have to kind of rely on people that you think maybe know something about that area. And so many times lobbyists are the only ones that do know anything about the area that the legislation deals with.
But information is the main thing that we need that's reliable and accurate and instantly available in as far as possible.
I think the lobby serves a very, very valid purpose. And we need the intelligence, the research, the analysis that the lobby provides on certain measures.
After all, the lobbyist in Austin is presenting his client's most favorable side. Certainly, he occupies a position somewhat like a criminal defense lawyer does. You wouldn't expect a defense lawyer to have someone get up and testify as to the bad character of his client. Well, you don't find it down here either. They present a very favorable facet of their operation. It's difficult for a member to have the time and in some cases the talent to do the research to find out the other side.
Some say the lobby has been less influential during this session than ever before. After all, this is the reform legislature. But you wouldn't know it to look at what's happened to major environmental, consumer, and ethics legislation during this session. Time and again, the lobby has managed to help kill or water down major reform in these areas, showing just as much clout as it did in the days of Gus Mutcher. It all comes down to a matter of supply and demand, I suppose. As long as the lobby is able to supply what legislators need most desperately, campaign money, information on key bills, and just plain old friendship, it will continue to be as integral and influential a part of the legislative process as the ballot box.
Chair recognizes Mr. Williamson to close on his amendment.